Hello, welcome everyone to the first Leadership and Retention Lab of 2026. Happy New Year to everyone. I hope you all had a wonderful holiday season. I had a great time, but I did end up getting sick. You may hear that a little bit in my in my in my nose, in my voice, but I'm feeling great. I'm glad to be here, and I'm really excited to talk about this topic today. If you've been following me for a little while, you know that I am deeply passionate about the topic of employee retention and the effect that has on businesses. And in this next year, where I'm looking to bring that enthusiasm and passion around employee retention is to small businesses. So, as I thought about the places that I've seen the biggest need and I think had a biggest impact this last year, it really is with businesses that are, growing, emerging, owner-led, 20 people or less. And that's really where the theme of today's discussion comes from. So what we're going to be talking about today is it's not a tech problem keeping you up at 3 a.m. And this comes from actual conversations I've been having. Many of you are small business owners. Many of you are in professions or in industries that are heavily people dependent. So the only way that you're able to deliver your services to your clients is through other people, is through building a team. And it is really stressful to manage a team. And I think that is one of the things that is often not discussed or brought to the forefront as small businesses grow. And so I have talked to so many small business owners that, they care deeply about their people, they care deeply about their business. And when it comes to a problem with an employee, whether it's a good growth related one, like the company's growing and you want someone to take on more, or if it's something that's on the more challenging side, someone's not performing, there's a drop ball somewhere that you need to talk to someone about. All of those things really weigh heavily on owners, and there's often no playbook for them as well. So that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. And really, when owners are running into this, I guess the big takeaway I'd have for you, if you're struggling a bit on managing teams, building teams, all of those people issue related things within your business, my main message to you is that this is a very predictable stage of growth. When you're growing, you will hit this growing pain. And so it's something that I see consistently, I see often, and it's got some very specific solutions on how you can start to handle it. So I want to give you a little peace of mind going into this year as we start off this series of LinkedIn Lives that we'll be doing a couple times a month, every month. But there's nothing that's broken. And it is something that is a very, very common set of issues. And that's why we're going to talk about it today. So again, if you're awake at 3 a.m., it's probably a people decision. So let's talk our way through that. So the first question then is, you're a confident owner and you're growing your business, things are going well. Why is this so hard? I guess that's the first one. Why is it so hard to handle people issues? And especially when you're used to handling very difficult operational or client issues. And the reason for that I've seen is that most technical or operational issues, they do have a very specific playbook or process. Like if this goes wrong, this is one of the things you need to do. There's a little bit of like a if this, then that when you're dealing with most operational or other types of business issues. However, when it comes to people, you are dealing with emotion and you're dealing with judgment and you're dealing with nuance and you're dealing with consequences. And the way that those things come together is oftentimes where the struggle begins, because people are people and we're wired differently, react differently, communicate differently, think differently. There's so many ways to try to solve a problem. And I think that's where the overwhelm can come in. And as a leader, there's no direct line between this happens, do this. It requires interpretation. And that mental load of trying to work through, so what am I going to do? How am I going to handle this? I don't want to lose this person, but yet I need this to change. That mental load of working through all those options is why it's such a heavy weight. Sorry about that. Lingering coughing from the holidays. But if you think about something like unclear expectations, as a manager, and you want to talk to a person on your team about unclear expectations, what appears to be unclear expectations, there's multiple ways to go about doing that. You typically have to start off with yourself. What have you communicated? What have you said? What do you really expect? What's really required? Is there anything that's extra? And then going through that same process for that person. What have they been doing? What have they been thinking? What have they been doing well? What have they been struggling with? And again, putting all that complexity together is why I believe people issues feel much, much heavier than operational types of issues. And that's, again, something I continue to hear consistently from the small business owners that I work with. So the next question is like, why? Is there a reason why this shows up when it does? And my experience has been is that when a company is growing, and typically, again, you have to add people in order to grow your business. It's typically impossible to really scale and grow without adding people. But when you do that, you end up kind of in this catch. When you're a new company and a new business, you can operate pretty informally. And, everyone's in the same room. Like everyone's on the same. I mean, it's just a handful of people to get a message across. You talk to your 3 people and you move on, right? When you're talking about when you're talking about a growth, then the complexity of your business starts to grow faster than your structure or your infrastructure. So your way of getting things done, your way of operating suddenly is completely different than what it was previously. And you have to start to shift from informal towards more formal. Now, I'm not saying you have to become corporate. No. That is not what most businesses do not need to go down a corporate path or that feel. However, you do need some structure as you start to grow in order to make sure that people know what's expected, to make sure issues get handled and that sort of thing. Because when there's not a structure, or again, even an additional, like as an owner, at some point, you even have to identify and promote another manager, right? Someone else needs to start taking over some client responsibilities, perhaps team guidance and direction. So you even have to start to hand off a little bit of your management responsibilities to another employee, a trusted employee who you promote. And even when you do that, many times those questions continue to come back to you. So one of the symptoms at this stage is, as a manager or owner, you need to be handing things off to others. You understand that, you see that, that's the only way to grow the business. But for whatever reason, those issues start to become Teflon and they kind of bounce off other people and come back to you. And that is, again, a natural stage of growth and very, very common symptoms to the fact that you're getting kind of pulled into more people issues than are reasonable for you at this stage of growth. Your genius as an owner is to be driving the business, is to be selling and delivering to clients. And the weight of dealing with people issues, delegation that's coming back, issues that continue to come back to you, when you start to become that bottleneck for activities and decisions, that's really where it's time to pause and to see if there's perhaps a better way. And again, this stage is not about, and again, I'm not going to tell you that you need an HR person in place, because that is not what you need. But what you do need is support. You do need some support to manage the complexity of the number of people issues that are coming to you and getting stuck with you, and keeping you from working on your business. So again, very natural, very normal stage of the business. So how do you approach the stage? So you're in the stage, you are starting to feel the burden of all the people questions and issues coming to you. Many cases, and this is often a great thing to do, a lot of leaders, again, you'll start to bring in other specialists to help you. So certainly if you don't have an accountant, you should probably have an accountant. So getting out of that side of the business and having someone help you with bookkeeping and accounting, great idea. The same is true with marketing. At some point, you need someone to come in and start to help you drive marketing strategy, marketing delivery, and things like that. And what I think is often missing is people coverage. And a common thing to do, and again, is to get like a PEO in place or some sort of combination of a payroll company, benefits. Sometimes that's delivered through a PEO, sometimes that's through separate vendors. I mean, really, it depends what's right for you as an organization. And I think a lot of owners believe that when they put in a PEO or some of these vendors, that is going to be the answer to their people coverage issues. And those solutions are fantastic. They're phenomenal. What they do, though, is they take the administrative burden of around your people kind of off your plate to some extent. So running payroll becomes much easier. You're able to deliver competitive benefits to your companies, typically either through a vendor or through a PEO or an ASO relationship. There's so many things you can do, but they're often disappointed to find that as an owner, they still are owning the day-to-day HR issues, meaning that if a question comes up from an employee, that owner is often the person that gets that question and kind of ends up with that question on their plate to resolve. And so the burden, if you will, of owning the problem continues to stay with the manager. And that manager or owner still needs to be the one either to call the PEO or to do the follow-up or to kind of bridge between that employee having the question and getting an answer, or anything to do with policy, compliance, other manager questions as they're managing other people. So, I always have kind of like a heart moment for these owners who are hoping to kind of get these things off their plate and keep finding that they're still pulled in to some extent. And the solution to this, I don't think is necessarily, more templates, or again, I don't think that most companies need a full-time HR hire or even a part-time HR hire. What helps and what's needed is experienced judgment and steady support. That's how I look at it. And that putting that manager in a place or that owner in a place to be getting some really good advice. So if there's an advisor, like true HR advisor that gets to know the owner and gets to know the business, that person can help navigate and more quickly identify issues and resolve issues within the organization in partnership with that owner and with their management team if they've designated a few people as managers. And that way, managers have a bit of a backup. So typically, you're promoting your best technical person, right? So you're an owner, you promote your best technical person to manage the team. And that person can many times get pulled into HR issues and not know how to handle them. And then guess what? That newly promoted manager comes back to you. And having an HR advisor, someone knowledgeable, someone who can help cover on people issues, that person then can be that in between to help intervene with that new manager, give that coaching and advice, and help issues get solved more quickly while they're coaching and developing your new manager. And this model is what I've seen work really well for small growing businesses. It's not a common approach. And that is why I have taken the time going into this year, and I'm officially launching this week, a new service called HR Essentials. And this idea really came from this idea of owners need to replace themselves and get themselves out of the middle and have an experienced advisor come in and help with general management issues and providing management advice, not only answering employee questions directly, but helping their newly promoted managers be successful, and providing HR advice and support to them as owners, understanding them, their situation, their struggles, and then coming alongside to help them get those issues resolved real time. So things don't stay out there and linger for a long period of time. So really, HR Essentials, which is my new product that I'm excited to launch, really came from that idea. So it's a way of supporting owners without adding complexity, without adding headcount, and in a way that takes that weight off the owner. And it's an emotional weight, and I really appreciate that. So that is what I wanted to talk a little bit about today. I'm curious if it's something that you're running into in your businesses. And again, if you've ever had to, and this came from many one-on-one conversations with small business owners that were really wrestling with an employee issue or question and reached out to me for help. And again, yes, we resolved the issue through our conversation, but the biggest benefit was the relief. And that's, I guess, if there's anything I would like to be just talking about, that's the result, is the peace of mind that owners get from knowing they're not wrestling with employee issues and decisions themselves without someone to talk to who has experience. And the thing that's made me the most sad as I've gone through and talked to leaders is I have talked to many business owners that either decided not to grow their business because of their worries about building teams and the struggle that goes on with building teams. I mean, that makes me really sad to feel like you have to do a self-imposed limit on the size of your business because you're intimidated by dealing with people issues. I mean, which again, there's maybe not a obvious solution or a cookie cutter solution to problems, but there are always paths forward for managing people and building great teams that deliver great work. There's always a path to do that. Now, and I've heard of managers that have decided either not to grow, or when they've had that dream client come along, they've said, I'm not sure I can pursue that. They've hesitated. So that finally they're building their business, things are happening, and there's this pause, which I think is so sad. It makes me so sad that you would stop and not grow when you're on that verge of what you've always wanted and what you're putting your kind of blood, sweat, and tears into as you build your business. That is something I don't want for leaders. And again, having good advice and support can make all the difference. So if this stage feels familiar to you, or if you feel like this describes a situation that you're in, please message me. So I can be reached on LinkedIn. There is through DMs. I can be reached at julie@tealtalentstrategy.com. Or, again, through my link in bio. There's a link in my bio on LinkedIn where you can just directly schedule a meeting. I would love to talk through whether this type of support would be helpful for you or your company. I'm going to continue to talk about this work pretty deeply through the month of January, and we'll be starting to take new clients for a soft launch at the end of this month to start this whole HR Essentials service. So I'm really looking forward to making a difference with so many of these businesses that I know are out there and need that additional support. So again, I appreciate being able to talk this through. I hope you were able to identify with this business dilemma. And again, I'm confident, based on my experience, that there are solutions so that you can get a full night's sleep as an owner. And going forward, what you're going to start to hear from this show, this live show, is that I'm starting to bring in some guests. I'm so excited. So next week, I will be bringing Ben Bomar from Lithius Group. One of the pain points that he's familiar with is when small businesses are one departure away from an emergency. So as a small business owner, you invest heavily in your team. And you've got to have at least one person on your team that if they left, it would be an emergency. And that is the foundation of his business, is helping to give business leaders the peace of mind that they can that they're prepared in the event of a departure. They've got a backup plan. They've got things documented. Things are in a great place from a redundancy and risk management standpoint. And he has walked side by side through with so many owners, and has even the emotional side of walking through preventing, key person risk, having someone leave that you didn't expect. So we're gonna have a great conversation next week. I hope you'll join us. And again, the next week will be one departure away from an emergency, and we'll dive into that topic with Ben. So thank you for joining me today. It's great to see everyone. Thank you. I hope your year is off to a good start. I'm excited for all the exciting developments this year helping small business, and I wish you a great day. Thank you.